Alrighty. Hey, um, I was just thinking that I wanted to read a book, and if I'm gonna read a book, um, like this, I might as well read it out loud and share. So, this is Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, 33rd degree Freemason. Morals and Dogma of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry prepared for the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree for the southern jurisdiction of the United States and published by its authority, Charleston. So, uh, yeah, I figure this is, entered in according to Act of Congress in the year of 1871 by Albert Pike in the Office of the Librarian of Congress, Washington. I figure, if this is 1871 that Albert Pike enters it, and this is 1906, the Supreme Council of the Southern Jurisdiction enters it in the Office of the Librarian of Congress. This is fair game. We're good to go. So I'm going to read because I think that this is a fascinating book, and even I won't even. Uh, yeah, I'll just get into it first here with the preface, and then yeah. So preface. It says the following work has been prepared by authority of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree for the Southern jurisdiction of the United States by the Grand Commander and is now published by its direction. It contains the lectures of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite in that jurisdiction and is specially intended to be read and studied by the brethren of that obedience in connection with the rituals of the degrees. It is hoped and expected that each will furnish himself with a copy, and make himself familiar with it, for which purpose, as the cost of the work consists entirely in the printing and binding, it will be furnished at a price as moderate as possible. No individual will receive pecuniary profit from it except the agents for its sale. It has been copyrighted to prevent its republication elsewhere, and the copyright, like those of all the other works prepared for the Supreme Council, has been assigned to the trustees for that body. Whatever profits may accrue from it will be devoted to purposes of charity. The brethren of the right in the United States and Canada will be afforded the opportunity to purchase it, nor is it forbidden that other Masons shall, but they will not be solicited to do so. In preparing this work, the Grand Commander has been about equally author and compiler, since he has extracted quite half its contents from the works of the best writers and most philosophic or eloquent thinkers. Perhaps it would have been better and more acceptable if he had extracted more and written less. Still, perhaps half of it is his own, and in incorporating here the thoughts and words of others, he has continually changed and added to the language, often intermingling, in the same sentences, his own words with theirs. It not being intended for the world at large, he has felt at liberty to make, from all accessible sources, a compendium of the morals and dogma of the right, to remold sentences, change and add words and phrases, combine them with his own, and use them as if they were his own, to be dealt with at his pleasure and so availed of as to make the whole most valuable for the purposes intended. He claims, therefore, little of the merit of authorship, and has not cared to distinguish his own from that which he has taken from other sources, being quite willing that every portion of the book, in turn, may be regarded as borrowed from some old and better writer. The teachings of these readings are not sacramental, so far as they go beyond the realm of morality into those of other domains of thought and truth. The ancient and accepted Scottish rite uses the word dogma in its true sense of doctrine, or teaching, and it is not dogmatic in the odious sense of that term. Every one is entirely free to reject and dissent from whatsoever herein may seem to him to be untrue or unsound. It is only required of him that he shall weigh what is taught, and give it fair hearing and unprejudiced judgment. Of course, the ancient theosophic and philosophic speculations are not embedded as part of the doctrines of the right. Let me read that again. It says, of course, the ancient theosophic and philosophic speculations are not embodied as part of the doctrines of the right, but because it is of interest and profit to know what the ancient intellect thought upon these subjects, and because nothing so conclusively proves the radical difference between our human and the animal nature as the capacity of the human mind to entertain such speculations in regard to itself and the deity. But as to these opinions themselves, we may say, in the words of the learned canonist Ludovicus Gomez, and I apologize if I butcher this, it says, opiniones secundum veritatem temporum senescent et inter moriantur alique diverse vel prioribus contrari renscanter and et dende pubescent. Okay, that was horrible. I apologize. Yeah, I don't want to sit here and have y'all wait for me to figure that one out, but maybe we'll get that figured out. Maybe I'll post a translation or something. Okay, and then the next page it goes and it shows the different ranks. Maybe I can get that clear in there. Yeah. So here it is, Morals and Dogma, the Lodge of Perfection. Ancient and accepted rite, the Scottish Freemasonry. Ordo Apceo. On my copy, it's a little, as you can see, it's a little worn on the front. Yeah, it does. I don't know. It says Apceo. I can see that much for sure. Order out of chaos. And that's really what he gets into in this first. I've only so far on my own read a little bit of this. Maybe a few pages. But here we go with one. Because I think this is like a journey through the degrees. And it says, first degree, the apprentice. You have the 12-inch rule and the common gavel. See how long this one is real quick. Apprentice. "21 pages from one." We'll see if I can't get through this whole thing. It'd probably take a good hour to do that. Got time. So here we go. It says the 12-inch rule and the common gavel. Force, unregulated or ill-regulated, is not only wasted in the void, like that of gunpowder burned in the open air, and steam unconfined by science, but striking in the dark, and its blows meeting only the air, they recoil and bruise itself. It is destruction and ruin. It is the volcano, the earthquake, the cyclone, not growth and progress. It is Polyphemus blinded, striking at random, and falling headlong among the sharp rocks by the impetus of his own blows. The blind force of the people is a force that must be economized and also managed. As the blind force of steam, lifting the ponderous iron arms and turning the large wheels, is made to bore and rifle the cannon and to weave the most delicate lace. It must be regulated by intellect. Intellect is the people, and the people's force, what the slender needle of the compass is to the ship. Its soul, always counseling the huge mass of wood and iron, and always pointing to the north, to attack the citadels built up on all sides against the human race by superstitions, despotisms, and prejudices. The force must have a brain and a law. Then its deeds of daring produce permanent results, and there is real progress. Then there are sublime conquests. Thought is a force, and philosophy should be an energy, finding its aim and its effects in the amelioration of mankind. The two great motors of truth are the two great motors are truth and love. And when all these forces are combined and guided by the intellect and regulated by the rule of right and justice, and of combined and systematic movement and effort, the great revolution prepared for by the ages will begin to march. The power of the deity himself is in equilibrium with his wisdom. Hence, the only results are harmony. It says the power of the deity himself is in equilibrium with his wisdom. The power is in equilibrium with the wisdom, and so there is harmony. And today, so much power, but where is our wisdom? So we got to build. That's why we're reading this here to see what, Albert Pike, he was a Confederate general and a 33rd degree Freemason. We'll see what he's talking about here. I was thinking earlier, I always like to bring up how one of our founding fathers talked about, it'd say that the Republic was, could only be kept by a moral and religious people. And, that made sense. And so it's always stuck with me. And then I just thought of this here, essential text. And I was like, wow, moral and religious, morals and dogma, religion, dogma. Pike might be, saying something along these lines. It's important to understand because, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry has been extremely influential. And so we ought to read this book and learn. So I will continue. It says, it is because force is ill-regulated that revolutions prove failures. Therefore, it is that so often insurrections, coming from those high mountains that domineer over the moral horizon, justice, wisdom, reason, right, built of the purest snow of the ideal after a long fall from rock to rock, after having reflected the sky in their transparency, and been swollen by 100 affluents, in the majestic path of triumph, suddenly lose themselves in quagmires like a California river in the sands. The onward march of the human race requires that the heights around it should blaze with noble and enduring lessons of courage, deeds of daring dazzle history, and form one class of the guiding lights of man. There the stars and coruscations from that great sea of electricity, the force inherent in the people. To strive, to brave all risks, to perish, to persevere, to be true to oneself, to grapple body to body with destiny, to surprise defeat by the little terror it inspires. Now to confront unrighteous power, now to defy intoxicated triumph. These are the examples that the nations need, and the light that electrifies them. There are immense forces in the great caverns of evil beneath society, in the hideous degradation, squalor, wretchedness, and destitution, vices and crimes that reek and simmer in the darkness in that populace below the people of great cities. There, disinterestedness vanishes. Everyone howls, searches, gropes, and gnaws for himself. Ideas are ignored, and of progress there is no thought. This populace has two mothers, both of them stepmothers: ignorance and misery. Want is their only guide. For the appetite alone they crave satisfaction. Yet even these may be employed. The lowly sand we trample on, cast into the furnace, melted, purified by fire, may become resplendent crystal. They have the brute force of the hammer, but their blows help on the great cause when struck within the lines, traced by the rule, held by wisdom and discretion. Yet it is this very force of the people, this titanic power of the giants, that builds the fortifications of tyrants and is embodied in their armies. Hence the possibility of such tyrannies as those of which it has been said that Rome smells worse under Vitellius than under Sulla, under Claudius and under Domitian. There is a deformity of baseness corresponding to the ugliness of the tyranny. The foulness of the slaves is a direct result of the atrocious baseness of the despot. A miasma exhales from these crouching consciences that reflect the master. The public authorities are unclean. Hearts are collapsed. Consciousness is shrunken. Souls puny. This is so under Caracalla. It is so under Commodus. It is so under Heliogabalus. While from the Roman Senate under Caesar there comes only the rank odor peculiar to the eagle's eyrie. Apologize for making this thing all shifty. It's my laptop sitting on a stack of books. So, we will continue here. If I can find this. Very interesting. I think we already passed the point that I had gotten to. It says, it is the force of the people that sustains all these despotisms, the basest as well as the best. That force acts through armies, and these often are enslaved than liberate. Despotism there applies the rule. Force is the mace of steel at the saddle bow of the knight or of the bishop in armor. Passive obedience by force supports thrones and oligarchies. Spanish kings and Venetian senates. Might, in an army wielded by tyranny, is the enormous sum total of utter weakness. And so humanity wages war against humanity in despite of humanity. So a people willingly submits to despotism, and its workmen submit to be despised, and its soldiers to be whipped. Therefore it is that battles lost by a nation are often progress attained. Less glory is more liberty. Says, so a people willingly submits to despotism, and its workmen submit to be despised, and its soldiers to be whipped. Therefore it is that battles lost by a nation are often progress attained. Battles lost by a nation are often progress attained. Less glory is more liberty. When the drum is silent, reason sometimes speaks. Tyrants use the force of the people to chain and subjugate. That is, they enyoke the people. Then they plow with them as men do with oxen yoked. Thus the spirit of liberty and innovation is reduced by bayonets, and principles are struck dumb by cannon shot. While the monks mingle with the troopers, and the church, militant and jubilant, Catholic or Puritan, sings Te Deums for victories over rebellion. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. Tedeums. The military power, not subordinate to the civil power. Again, the hammer or mace of force, independent of the rule, is an armed tyranny, born full grown, as Athene sprung from the brain of Zeus. It spawns a dynasty, and begins with Caesar to rot into Vitellius and Commodus. At the present day it inclines to begin where formerly dynasties ended. Constantly the people put forth immense strength, only to end in immense weakness. The force of the people is exhausted in indefinitely prolonging things long since dead, in governing mankind by embalming old dead tyrannies of faith, restoring dilapidated dogmas, regilding faded, worm-eaten shrines, whitening and roguing ancient and barren superstitions, saving society by multiplying parasites, perpetuating superannuated institutions, enforcing the worship of symbols as the actual means of salvation, and tying the dead corpse of the past mouth to mouth with the living present. Therefore it is that if one of the fatalities of humanity to be condemned to eternal struggles with phantoms, with superstitions, bigotries, hypocrisies, prejudices, the formulas of error and the pleas of tyranny, despotisms, seen in the past, become respectable, as the mountain bristling with volcanic rock, rugged and horrid, seen through the haze of distance, is blue and smooth, is beautiful. The sight of a single dungeon of tyranny is worth more to dispel illusions and create a holy hatred of despotism. The sight of a single dungeon of tyranny is worth more to dispel illusions and create a holy hatred of despotism, and to direct force aright, than the most eloquent volumes. The French should have preserved the Bastille as a perpetual lesson. Italy should not destroy the dungeons of the Inquisition. The force of the people maintained the power that built its gloomy cells, and placed the living in their granite sepulchres. And it says the sight of a single dungeon of tyranny is worth more to dispel illusions and create a holy hatred of despotism, and to direct force aright in the most eloquent volumes. The force of the people cannot, by its unrestrained and fitful action, maintain and continue in action an existence of free government once created. That force must be limited, restrained, conveyed by distribution into different channels, and by roundabout courses to outlets, whence it is to issue as the law, action, and decision of the state, as the wise old Egyptian kings conveyed in different canals by subdivision the swelling waters of the Nile, and compelled them to fertilize and not devastate the land. There must be the jus et norma, the law and rule, or gauge, of constitution and law, within which the public force must act. Make a breach in either, and the great steam hammer, with its swift and ponderous blows, crushes all the machinery to atoms, and at last, wrenching itself away, lies inert and dead amid the ruin it has wrought. The force of the people, or the popular will, in action and exerted, symbolized by the gavel, regulated and guided by, and acting within the limits of law and order, symbolized by the 24-inch rule, has for its fruit liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty regulated by law, equality of rights in the eye of the law, brotherhood with its duties and obligations as well as its benefits. You will hear shortly of the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar as part of the jewels of the lodge. The rough ashlar is said to be a stone, as taken from the quarry, in its rude and natural state. The perfect ashlar is said to be a stone made ready by the hands of the workman, to be adjusted by the working tools of the fellow craft. We shall not repeat the explanations of these symbols given by the York Rite. You may read them in its printed monitors. They are declared to allude to the self-improvement of the individual craftsman, a continuation of the same superficial interpretation. The rough ashlar is the people, as a mass, rude and unorganized. The perfect ashlar, or cubical stone, symbol of perfection, is the state, the rulers deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, the constitution and laws speaking the will of the people, the government harmonious, symmetrical, efficient, its powers properly distributed and duly adjusted in equilibrium. The rough ashlar is the people, and the perfect ashlar is the state, he says. I remember whenever I first started listening to Alex Jones, I've heard other people say this too. It's like, they want to say, forget God, worship the state, and they want to worship the state as God. And, it's really interesting here. So he says, if we delineate a cube on a plane surface thus, we have visible 3 faces, 9 external lines, drawn between 7 points. The complete cube has 3 more faces, making 6, 3 more lines, making 12, and 1 point, making 8. As the number 12 includes the sacred numbers 3, 5, 7, and 3 times 3 or 9, it is produced by adding the sacred number 3 to 9. While its own 2 figures, 1, 2, the unit or monad, and duad, added together, make the same sacred number 3. It was called the perfect number, and the cube became the symbol of perfection. produced by force, acting by rule, hammered in accordance with lines measured by the gauge. Out of the rough ashlar, it is an appropriate symbol of the force of the people, expressed as the constitution and law of the state, and of the state itself. The three visible faces represent the three departments: the executive, which executes the law; the legislative, which makes the laws; the judiciary, which interprets the laws, applies and enforces them between man and man, between the state and the citizens. The three invisible faces are liberty, equality, and fraternity, the threefold soul of the state, its vitality, spirit, and intellect. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. I can't disagree with that. I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, so continuing, says, though Masonry neither usurps the place of, nor apes religion, prayer is an essential part of our ceremonies. It is the aspiration of the soul toward the absolute and infinite intelligence, which is the one supreme deity, most feebly and misunderstandingly characterized as an architect. Certain faculties of man are directed toward the unknown: thought, meditation, prayer. The unknown is an ocean, of which conscious is the compass. Thought, meditation, prayer are the great mysterious pointings of the needle. It is a spiritual magnetism that thus connects the human soul with the deity. These majestic irradiations of the soul pierce through the shadow toward the light. It is but a shallow scoff to say that prayer is absurd, because it is not possible for us by means of it to persuade God to change his plans. He produces foreknown and foreintended effects by the instrumentality of the forces of nature, all of which are his forces. Our own are part of these. Our free agency to our will are forces. We do not absurdly cease to make efforts to attain wealth or happiness, prolong life, and continue health, because we cannot by any effort change what is predestined. If the effort also is predestined, it is not the less our effort, made of our free will. So likewise we pray. Will is a force. Thought is a force. Prayer is a force. Why should it not be of the law of God that prayer, like faith and love, should have its effects? Man is not to be comprehended as a starting point, or progress as a goal. Without those two great forces of faith and love, prayer is sublime. Orisons that beg and clamor are pitiful. To deny the efficacy of prayer is to deny that faith, love, and effort. To deny the efficacy of prayer is to deny that of faith, love, and effort. Yet the effects produced when our hand, moved by our will, launches a pebble into the ocean never cease.